Hello everybody, my name is Ryan Averett, I'm a mental health therapist, and today I wanted to talk about two things that annoy me, toxic positivity and manifestation. So let's jump right into it. Toxic positivity and the dark side of manifestation. We'll talk about what is toxic positivity, we'll talk about CBT versus this idea of gaslighting yourself into feeling better, then we'll talk about manifestation and the law of attraction, and what I view as a healthy middle ground, realistic thinking. So what is toxic positivity? Toxic positivity is an overemphasis on staying positive at all costs, even when this denies genuine suffering. And some examples of this might be minimizing grief, so this idea that everything happens for a reason, or forcing cheerfulness in the face of depression or trauma. Some obvious consequences of this could be emotional invalidation, self-blame, and shame when people can't maintain constant positivity. So as this is defined, I think we could all look at toxic positivity and say, this is a negative thing. Next, I want to talk about CBT versus this idea of gaslighting yourself into feeling better. Part of what informed me making this video is seeing this post. So on Reddit, there's this post and it says, maybe I can gaslight myself into being okay. Wait, this is just cognitive behavioral therapy. And then, I don't think this is the same person, but someone else goes on and talks about in the comments, cognitive restructuring is 100% just gaslighting yourself if your core beliefs, your truths in other words, your reality, are the opposite of the new and improved thoughts. You're lying to yourself, and all the evidence in the world won't convince your brain of those lies. So this is kind of the idea that I want to talk about and get into. So some people look at CBT and view it as toxic positivity, or describe it as tricking your brain, gaslighting yourself, whatever it might be. And it's such a shame that some people have this viewpoint, because these people wouldn't have this viewpoint for no reason. Like, obviously people who think about it this way have had a negative experience with a CBT therapist before, and that's such a shame that they have had that experience. I think that whatever version of CBT that someone was doing with them is misinformed and not what we should actually be doing. So what CBT actually does, or at least what a good CBT therapist does, is focus on identifying distorted thoughts and not denying real pain, and encourage balanced thinking, not just quote-unquote positive thinking. So instead of, let's say you're in a horrible situation, and instead of saying, okay, well, you should just think everything's great, CBT is going to ask, what's the evidence for and against this thought? And maybe a more rational response to your negative thought is something like, well, I'm in a really bad situation right now, but there's some things I can do to try to get out of it. Or maybe it's just, I'm in a really bad situation right now, but I do have X, Y, and Z going for me. CBT and this whole process of cognitive restructuring should never be about just inserting positive thoughts into your head. It should be about accuracy, flexibility, and not any sort of blind optimism. Next, I want to talk about manifestation and the law of attraction, because I think it kind of goes together with this idea of toxic positivity and where it can be negative. Manifestation is the belief that your thoughts literally shape reality. So thinking about wealth will actually bring you wealth, or thinking about something positive happening is going to mean that something positive will definitely happen. And it makes sense why people are drawn to this. It feels empowering, this idea, okay, if I can think about something and through thinking about it make it happen, well, that gives you some power in maybe a situation where you don't have much power. And it can offer hope when things feel very uncertain in your life. But there's obvious problems with this. Like, first of all, this idea implicitly blames individuals for negative outcomes. So if something bad happens to somebody, then someone who believes in the law of attraction might think that, well, you attracted bad things by thinking in a negative way. And this also ignores structural and systemic barriers like poverty, discrimination, trauma. These are real things that you can't just think yourself out of. So this whole idea of manifestation encourages magical thinking rather than taking practical steps, or rather than thinking realistically about a situation. And this is obviously connected to toxic positivity because both demand this sort of good vibes only mentality instead of focusing on what is reality and how we can view reality in a realistic way. So what is the middle ground? What's more appropriate? What's more realistic? I think we should focus less on positivity and more on accuracy. And I think any good CBT therapist is doing this. Wishful thinking is distinct from actual evidence-based thinking. And realistic thinking reduces shame. Like, you don't have to force yourself into this whole good vibes only mentality. You just need some perspective on your situation, and a therapist can help with that. So at CBT's core, what we're hoping to do is give a balanced, evidence-grounded way of thinking through things. And that is much better than a toxically positive and overly positive or unrealistic way of viewing situations. Another way I see this toxic positivity popping up sometimes, or this idea of gaslighting yourself into feeling better, is in the form of positive affirmations. And I want to be very clear, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with the idea of positive affirmations. Writing something nice and sticking it on your mirror and having that to look at every day. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. However, there's sometimes where people write down or put down excessively positive or unrealistic things there. So, if you write on a sticky note, I am content and free of pain, and put that on your mirror and tell yourself, I'm going to tell myself that every day. It's like, well, maybe you're not free of pain. Like, maybe you have seriously painful things going on in your life, and there's nothing wrong with feeling that pain. On the other hand, I've heard some people write, I am a good person, and they'll write that on a sticky note and, put that on their mirror and look at that every day and tell themselves that I am a good person. And it's like, maybe, this might go into some of how I view people and good versus bad, but I don't think anybody's just a good person. Plenty of us have done things that we regret and we would say that aren't good. And does that make you a bad person? Absolutely not. But I do think it can be harmful to say, well, I might do this bad thing and this bad thing and this bad thing, but I'm just a good person at the end of the day. Maybe you're a mixed bag, and maybe that's a more realistic view of yourself. And I know you're probably not going to put I'm a mixed bag on a sticky note and put that on your mirror and tell yourself that every day, but maybe that's a more realistic view of yourself. So, people can tend to put these overtly positive things as positive affirmations and say them to themselves. And if they're not realistic, if they're not grounded in reality, then I'm not sure that that's doing anybody any good at the end of the day. So in conclusion, toxic positivity dismisses pain, and CBT, when done well by a good CBT therapist, can help find realistic thinking and not forced positivity. Manifestation oversimplifies life into this idea that thoughts create reality, which can definitely be harmful. And healthy growth requires acknowledging reality, not denying it. That's sort of the central point of this whole video. So that's about all I had to say on this topic. I appreciate anyone who stuck around and viewed the whole thing. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you have any questions or thoughts, leave a comment down below. That's all I have today. Thank you very much. Take care.